Stop to Sell is a space where Eduardo welcomes guests from various areas, he analyzes various topics, and establishes an action plan. The expression better done than perfect is typical. On the other hand, there are professionals who collect and analyze a lot of data before making a decision. Eduardo suggests you take an hour to think about your activity, prospecting methods, identifying needs, closing deals, following up with clients, and establishing partnerships. Eduardo is counting on you.
Attention, parar para vender funds. Near Business School in Barcelona is where neuroscience meets business. Get top education with their MBA, Masters and Bachelor programs available online and in person. Save 5% with promo code parar para vender 5. Visit their website and level up your business expertise.
Welcome to the first episode of the Stop to Sell podcast. It is a great pleasure to receive you in this new podcast I have here. So, Nikki, before we dive into curiosity and sales, tell us a bit about your story. How did you get into the world of sales training and the communication?
Well, I actually got my first professional sales job as a result of a college project. So that was way back in the late 1900s. It was a long, long time ago. Mm-hmm. I got my first professional job, and I was selling technology and for a company. And I worked my way up at that company, became their national sales manager. From that point, I moved to the manufacturer level and started selling that way. I was a traveling road warrior, one of those salespeople who my airline used to send me a Christmas gift every year because I traveled so much. So always on the road, and still really loving life. And while I was doing that, the traveling, I also started studying neuro-linguistic programming. And if that's a new term to anybody listening, it's just the study of communication. Started studying it with this idea that it would improve my selling skills, and it certainly did. But what it really did was made me a much better communicator, and that impacted all areas of my life. And after having a lot of success in my sales career, I was in that industry for 17 years. I got really curious about what else was out there, and started helping somebody else grow their business, and really kind of found my way into my own business, which is Sales Maven, as a result of being around entrepreneurs and finding that entrepreneurs, like most people, had never been trained on how to sell. So really struggled with sales conversations. That was something I felt like I could help people with. Started helping some people on the side, and somebody in particular convinced me that I needed to start my own business, which I did back in 2013, started Sales Maven, and I teach the conversation of sales, how to be more strategic in your sales conversations so that you're able to move to that place where you exchange dollars for services or dollars for products. So been doing that, like I said, since 2013, and having the time of my life training people how to talk more strategically in a sales conversation.
Okay, so everything started 12 years ago, right?
Yeah, for my business, yeah.
Okay. I have just started 5 years ago, so it is nice to see Nikki with so great experience. And I need to say, because I love your podcast, I love Sales Maven. We talked about this.
Thank you.
I hear your last episode today during my lunch. What's the price? and I love it. And when I decided to talk with you, when I decided to. When you talk about this episode, we decided to choose curiosity. And how do you describe what you really do when you people help sell with curiosity? What do you do with that people?
Yeah, so it's so important in sales that you're able to create some curiosity, because when you're having conversations with people, oftentimes they have no idea what you know. They have no idea what you do. So the idea of creating curiosity, it actually comes from my signature framework of what makes for a successful sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. I actually wrote my third book around it. And step 2 of the selling staircase is creating curiosity. And most people, when you ask them, do you know how to create curiosity? When you're talking about yourself, your product, your business, what it is that you offer out in the world, people look at me like, what do you mean create curiosity? But if you can't pique somebody's interest in wanting to know more, they'll shut down, they'll tune you out, or you'll never even get to have that real conversation, that real sales conversation. So creating curiosity is so crucial to your success. Now, I teach creating curiosity as it's the difference between how you call a dog and how you call a cat in a sales conversation.
Okay.
So stick with me for just a second here. So if you think about when you want to get your dog's attention, you tend to change your demeanor a little bit, and you do things like you act excited, come here, boy, come here, right? And dogs love that energy, and they're like, oh, something fun's gonna happen. I don't know what it is. Like maybe it's a ride or a bath or a treat, who knows? But they're so in. But in sales conversations, sometimes when we have a prospect or somebody that we know we can help, we show up with what I call this dog calling energy. And people are not like dogs. So if you show up with this, like, I'm so excited to talk to you because I know I can help you. And you do this like really excited thing, people will push away. They'll go like, oh,
That's true.
It's too much. It's too intense. So instead I teach to create curiosity. Think about how you call a cat. You do this thing where you go, here, kitty, kitty, here, kitty, kitty. Right. And the thing about cats is they don't even come to that often. They'll just give you a look like, what? Like, I'm not even sure if I'm in yet. They're still waiting to see. And when you think about creating curiosity, you want to pique the interest of the person enough for them to go, what does that mean? Tell me more about that. How does that relate to what I'm doing or what I care about? So there's a whole program on creating curiosity. I teach a whole course on it, but just to get your, like, the listener started on creating curiosity, think about, what do you say to some of the most common questions that we get asked all the time? Things like, how are you? Or how's business? Or what have you been up to lately? Right? Like super easy, common questions. Those are perfect opportunities to have an answer that could potentially pique somebody's curiosity, so they can have some kind of a follow-up question, because now we get into a real conversation. And, I teach that sales isn't something that you do to another person. It's something you do with another person. So you want to have a with conversation. You need to both be in the conversation. It needs to have some back and forth. So just to give you an example, if somebody said, hey, Nikki, what have you been up to lately? I can have an answer. And to create curiosity, I always say you want to have like a 1 or 2 sentence response to the question. You don't want to have anything more than 3 in your dog calling mode. That's like word vomit, right? So if you can have an answer that lets somebody go like, oh, what does that mean? Or like, oh, what's that? So right now, if somebody said, hey, Nikki, what have you been up to lately? Or, how's your week going? I might say, oh, something exciting's happening this week. I'm actually bringing back an offer that I haven't put out into the market for 5 years. Now, that may or may not work, but it gives somebody potentially some question to ask me, like, what offer? What is this for? Who is it for? Or what does that mean, Nikki? Or what do you do? Right? And now it opens the door for me to start to talk about my business, working with clients privately, like whatever that thing is that I'm doing. So you have to be able to create curiosity in your business, in your conversations. And I always compare it to, it's kind of like building a muscle. If you want to build a muscle, you don't just do it once. You got to work it. You got to practice. So learning how to create curiosity is something you can do all the time with anybody in your conversation with, and see, does it spur interest? Do they go, what's that mean? Or tell me more about that. Or let's have a conversation about that. Because when you start to have those conversations, then you can start to identify, are you talking to a potential client or not?
Nikki, that's true. And I think there is a a particular point that I wanted to talk with you. What happens? It's going to appear your cat here. It seems that you are looking. No, what I'm talking to you, Nikki, it is something that I think happens, and it is salespeople sometimes are looking too much, are thinking too much in their product, are thinking too much in the world, in the words that they are going to use, but the curiosity, it's not about them. The curiosity, it's not about their companies, their products, their service. The curiosity will be or should be about the customer, the person in the other side of the table or the mobile phone. And what happens? Look, in the other day, I have a great guy that called me and said, look, Eduardo, my salespeople aren't selling the leadership training programs with the mobile phone. And I said, look, I don't have time right now in my agenda to go to your company. Please record some calls and send it to me. And what happens? They were reading the script, and between the first good morning, I am, and the first questions, it lasted 1 minute and 30 seconds. And I said, that's not curiosity. That's not thinking about who they are. Because I told to them, look, in 1 minute and 30 seconds, they are thinking about the dinner. They are thinking about the children in the kindergarten. They are thinking in a lot of things, but they are listening to you.
That's right.
And that's the point that salespeople should think. First, buying the third book of Nikki Rausch and thinking how to put the customer in the center of the curiosity.
Yeah, okay, so I mentioned there's a whole course on creating curiosity. So it's the answer that I gave was more about if you're having a conversation just to see, are you talking to somebody that's a potential client? But when you're talking about an outreach, then from a creating curiosity standpoint, the number one way I think to create curiosity from an outreach is to ask a really smart question, to ask a question of the other person that gets them going like, oh, I haven't been asked that before. Let me come up with an answer to that. And it needs to be something that is related to them. Because if you can ask, instead of telling people like, oh, here, like you said, this minute and 30 seconds, like, here's who I am, here's who my company is, here's all the stuff that we sell. That's what I call word vomiting and dog calling energy, right? Like, oh, like too much. So like, you're right, they're not going to listen. But if you can ask them a question that gets them going like, maybe that's something I'd like to answer and know the answer to, because nobody's asked me that question. And now it shows that you're interested in them as the prospect. It's not like, oh, I'm just here to talk at you. I'm here to talk with you. So if I can ask you a question that piques your interest, then we can maybe have a conversation. And I also believe that some of your questions should be about asking permission. I personally don't think you should sell to somebody that you don't have permission to sell to. So I always say in a call or in a conversation, you need to identify that you have these 3 things in place before you ever think about selling to somebody. 1, you need to understand what's important to them. Do they have a need or a want for what it is that you offer? Number 2, do you have a solution that meets that need or want? And then the third and most important is, do you have permission to sell to them? Because if you show up and just immediately go into sales mode with somebody and you don't have their permission, they're not listening. They're just trying to think about how quickly can they get out of that conversation so they can move on to the other things on their to-do list for the day.
That's true. And I don't know. I receive a lot of emails. I receive a lot of calls just telling me I have the right product for you. I have the right service for you. And I just think, what do you know about me?
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the point. And
Yeah.
the point is, well, we live strange moments right now because people don't want salespeople don't want to use the telephone or the mobile phone. People don't want to answer to emails. People don't want to answer to LinkedIn message. And the point is, how can I solve this? And I think the point is always humanize the channels, use curiosity.
Yes.
And that's the point, because when we perceive that all the script is using in automatic way, that I'm just one another one, well, I don't feel important. It's just another email, it's just another call.
Mhm.
So what are some of your curiosity questions, phrase, or question styles that tend to open doors?
Well, think about, I'm going to say it's going to be specific to whatever it is that you're offering, but realistically, think about asking a question, and you can even form the question around the thing that you solve. So for instance, if you're selling mobile phone services and you have some kind of a unique feature around the mobile phone service, instead of talking about the unique feature, ask it in the form of a question. Would a feature like this be something you'd be interested to learn more about? Or would a feature like this benefit you in some way? Or, depending on what the feature is, right? But maybe, I'm trying to avoid like just talking about price. Like, are you looking to save on your cell phone bill? Which maybe is the thing, but at least it's a question versus showing up and telling somebody, oh, I can save you all this money on your cell phone bill. Well, who even said they were looking to save money on their cell phone bill? So telling them what you can do before they've even expressed any interest is just a waste of their time and yours. So let's figure out what's important to them, right? Like I know that, in sales, the old thing is people love to say like, oh, here's a pen. Can you sell a pen to me? And my first question to that is, are you looking for a pen? Do you need a writing instrument? Because if not, I'm not going to try to convince you. That's not my job in sales.
That's so true.
Is not to convince you of something. My job is to understand, do you have a need? Do I have a solution? And do I have permission to sell to you? And if I can get those three things in place, then we can have a real conversation. And, one of the things that I will say, just in an outreach standpoint, I learned this so many years ago, like again, way back when I started in sales, is, a question that salespeople like to ask is, did I catch you at a good time? Like, right. And the thing about that question is it's kind of a knee-jerk question. Like everybody always asks like that question. And so instead ask a different question. Even if you just say, did I catch you at a bad time? Because then the person can say, yeah, I'm right in the middle of planning dinner. Okay, well, doesn't make sense to have a conversation with somebody when they're doing something else, right? So change up your question. Don't ask the same question that everybody else asks. Like, well, how are you today? Well, everybody asks that question. So ask something different. Ask something like, what was the best part of your day today? Or what is something that would benefit you from a timing standpoint today? Or do you have, even be specific, like, do you have 3 minutes to chat about, and then insert something, like be specific so that somebody can say yes or no, and be respectful of what their answer is. Because there's nothing worse than a salesperson who is just going to sell to you even when you said, I'm not interested. Like we had somebody that showed up at our door not too long ago. And the first question he asked me is like, do you have a company that does this service? And I said, I do have a company that does this service. And he went right into his pitch. And my husband, who was also a professional salesperson, comes over and he said, she already said she already has somebody. We're not interested. And he like closed the door. And I was like, oh, that felt harsh. But he's like, well, you already told him. He didn't even like wait for you to say whether or not you wanted to hear his pitch. And he just started like word vomiting all over you. Well, yeah, I don't want to hear that either.
That's so true. And it remembers me some phrase that I can't support anymore. And it is, we are leaders in, well, Nick, I don't know you, but when I grew up leader, it's just one company. It's just one guy. Now, every companies are leaders in something.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with leaders, please.
I love that one. I love that you point that one out. Like, again, if you're just saying what everybody else is saying, then you're not differentiating yourself at all.
Of course.
You know, we're all in this world of AI, and I love AI. I'm not dissing AI. There's a place for it. But if you're having AI write all of your messages, I guarantee you your messages sound like all the other 30 people that showed up selling the same thing that you're selling in that person's inbox with the same message. They all sound the same. Like we all now can go, well, that was written by AI. That was written by AI. That was written by AI. Like, can I get a message that sounds like a real person is talking to me? Like, otherwise, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in just having AI sell to me all day. That's not interesting to me.
Look, this summer, I noticed something particular with my son, 12 years old. And I noticed that when he saw some ads that they worked with AI, in his head, the product or the service is very bad.
Oh, interesting.
Look, that picture is with AI. Shouldn't be good. It was so strange for me because it is a 12-year boy, like, I am 47 years old, and the AI appears when I am 45, so I'm learning with that. But, well, in his case, no, it is part of the childhood, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it is AI, not good. It was strange for me. Look, no, Nikki, you are going to say something, tell.
I was just going to say one of my teachers used to always say to me, the more high tech it is, the more high touch it needs to be. Like, there's nothing wrong with using technology. I love technology. I've sold technology for many, many years. But when it's a high tech product, it's a high tech thing that you're doing, remember that you're still selling to a person. And that was the other thing I used to say to people, and still to my clients all the time, because I've sold to some very prestigious organizations. Like NASA was my client at one point. I sold something to NASA, like pretty prestigious company. But realistically, like, it sounds good for me to say that, but really it was Gene, right? Like the guy that I was working with, like it was him that was making the decision about whether or not they were going to put my product into their conference rooms. So acting like you're selling to a company, or that it's like a fake thing selling to, like, it doesn't connect with people. And even though, I've worked for some big companies, on, my business card sometimes was prestigious in my industry that I was in, of like, oh, she works for, XYZ company. But realistically, I always like, it doesn't matter what the name on their company card is. It's a person that you're selling to. It's people. It's a group that's making this decision. Like, AI is not making the decision on whether or not they're going to hire you or not, or whether or not you're going to be their provider for whatever it is that you're selling. So remember that it's the people, it's the person. So it's me to you, or it's me to the people in the room. And there needs to be that human element, that genuine connection. Because if you treat everybody like they're just walking around like a big old wallet, like I'm just a dollar sign, like you will not connect with people. So stop treating clients like their dollar signs are wallets, because like we vote with our wallets and we'll make business decisions and money spending decisions on that. But we're still people, and we want to be treated like we matter and we count as the buyer. So remember that you're selling to a person, no matter what their title or their business card or the company they work for says. It doesn't matter. It's still a person.
That's so true, Nikki. And behind the technology, like you said, there's always a person. And look, we are using high technology, but this is a conversation between two human beings. And that's how we always should think about the consultative selling, about putting not the customer, but putting the humans in the center of all the process. And when we are talking about curiosity and thinking about the sales funnel, we could think about that in prospection. We could think about that about the meetings. We could think about that the closing moment, or the upselling, the cross-selling. Always how to use the curiosity in these different stages of the sales funnel. People sometimes think, no, curiosity just to identify the customer needs. But I don't think so. What do you think, Nikki?
Yeah, I think curiosity can show up in every step of a sales conversation. And even once somebody is a client or is a customer for you, there's always opportunities to create some additional curiosity if you want additional business from them. I'm a big believer in repeat business, and I'm also a huge fan of creating increased, lifetime value of a client. So I don't want just a one and done sale with somebody. I'm looking to build long-term relationships with my clients that have a need for what it is that I offer. And so for me, it's my job to create curiosity even with my existing clients, because this is another, I think, kind of place where salespeople tend to fall down, is they think, well, I got the sale and I told them when we spoke 3 years ago when they became a client, all the ways that we work with clients. And I've never brought up anything else since. So they just do this one thing with me, but they don't know all the breadth of your product line or the breadth of your services that you can offer. And it's your job to create some curiosity from time to time in conversations to see, is there additional ways that you can serve that client? Are there additional opportunities here? And again, this is one of those places when I'm working with clients, it's often like, they're like, oh, I need all these new clients. I need, to go spend all this money on marketing. It's like, let's look at low hanging fruit. Like repeat business is always easier business to earn. So what have you gone back to your existing client base and offered recently? And they're like, nothing. Well, then that's an opportunity, because they always say, well, they already know what I sell. No, they don't. They forgot. Maybe you told them once, or maybe you told them twice, but they forgot. They're not thinking about you and your product all the time or your services all the time. So your job is to put something back in front of them. And it could be something as simple as, one of the things we haven't talked about recently is XYZ type of service. Is that something you'd ever even be open to us discussing? Like just even asking somebody that question plants the seed. So you got to plant seeds.
That's so true. That's so true. And look, Nikki, in that example that you just gave to us, I think we can find a link between curiosity and empathy in sales. Because when I'm using curiosity, well, I'm trying to understand their thoughts, their feelings about the problems that they are feeling. Do you agree this link between curiosity and empathy?
I do. I do think that's such an important, I love that you made that connection because again, people don't want to be talked at. People don't want to be convinced. People want to make decisions for themselves. People want to be respected in a conversation, and people want to be seen and heard and cared about by the people they're working with typically. So when you can show a real care for somebody in the form of asking them a question versus just like, hey, I want to tell you about this new service that we're offering, blah, 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 word vomit all over you. No, like instead ask, we have this new service. It does XYZ. Is that something you would ever be open to discussing? Or is that something you'd find value in? Or you ask a question about that relates to the service. Like, hey, have you ever thought about having somebody review your sales calls for you? I know you had said that this is something that you offer. And so if you're able to review somebody's sales calls and they never even knew that that was an option for them, like how powerful is that when they're like, well, do you mean you would review our sales calls for us? Because, oh my gosh, we would sign up for that today, right? But like you have to plant that seed and show care for them and then be respectful and allow them to make the decision. Yes, no, I have a question, I have an objection, whatever that next response is.
Okay, Nikki. Look, I have just finished my neuro business master, and when we are teaching about neuro business, always appear a concept that it is very powerful to the brain, and it is storytelling. Always about storytelling.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking, how can storytelling be used to create curiosity?
Well, you can tell a mini story. So I love storytelling too. They say storytelling is the language of the brain, right? Like our brains love a story. We love a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the thing about story is that when you're telling somebody a story, when you're telling for instance, let's say you're telling a client story, success story that you just had with somebody, people aren't thinking necessarily about, oh, that's so great for your client. They're thinking like, where do I fit in that story? Because we like to find ourselves in the story. So for instance, from a storytelling standpoint, one of the things that, using curiosity and bringing storytelling into it, and I'm going to use a real example. If somebody were to say to me, like right now, like, hey, Nikki, what's something exciting going on in your business, right? This is a perfect opportunity for me to tell a little story and maybe create some curiosity. So I could say something like, oh, I just had a client increase her price by $8,000 on a proposal after a strategy session. And her client said yes. There's nothing better than helping a client increase their overall value on an order. Now, somebody might be like, how'd you do that, Nikki? What does that mean? And they're like, I'd like to increase my proposals by $8,000, right? Like, how do we do that, Nikki? So think about, can you share something? Now, again, I didn't go into like, here's how we did it, or here's who the client is, or I didn't go into all of that because I didn't, necessarily have permission. But now I will use that story, by the way. This is true. I only tell stories that are true, unless I say this is a parable or this is a made up story, right? So in this particular case, like I have that in a testimonial. I will share that story in all different types of conversations when it's appropriate. So like one of the things I know people often struggle with is putting together effective proposals. And I am really good at looking at somebody's proposal, giving them some key things on how to improve them, and then increasing their close rate with their proposals. So instead of me just saying like, oh, that's what I do, I can tell it in the story using this particular client who, after reviewing the proposal, reviewing her offer, we went back and really looked at the pricing that she had put in there. And she actually increased her price by $8,000 than what she was going to after our meeting, to which the client immediately said yes to, right? Like, okay, so I can give you all the like bullet points, or I can share it in a story, and a story is more memorable. And the thing about stories is people repeat them back to me, right? Like, I know you listen to my podcast. I tell a lot of story on my podcast, and people will show up and be like, oh, Nikki, that story about the red-handled wrench. Like, I love that story. I share it all the time when I'm thinking about my pricing, right? Like, it's a story. And that actually is a parable. That isn't even a true story. Well, actually, that is a true story. It's just not my story. It's somebody else's. But, people remember, and they often will say, they'll say things like they'll call it the red hammer, or they'll call it a purple wrench, or they'll make the story is called the red-handled wrench, but they'll make up their own version of it, but they'll repeat back to me enough of the story to go like, this resonated with me. And that's what you want with your clients, to be memorable.
That's so true, Nikki. And first of all, people love stories. Second of all, like you say, storytelling is the language for the brain, or to the brain. And we always have a lot of results, and it is more impactful, completely different, talking, reading, speaking features, or talking about the others' benefits, what impacting the others. And that's totally different.
Yeah.
Nikki, well, I discover you in your podcast, and let me see if I can present. I think I was presenting, I'm sorry. I was presenting your website. Yes, it's here, your website. Okay, you have here a lot of service, a lot of resources. Do you want to talk about your service and what you can offer to the salespeople and to the market?
Thank you for asking. So I tend to work with people in two main ways. So I do private coaching. Well, I guess I should say three. I do private coaching, so that's one-on-one and or group coaching sessions for sales teams. And then I have a group coaching program. It's called the Sales Maven Society. And I do live group coaching calls where people can come and ask their sales questions, and then they get access to my training center. I have a myriad of sales training content in that training center. I always say it's like the Netflix of sales training. There's an answer and a training on just about anything you can think related to sales. So those are the two main ways. And then I do trainings for organizations where they bring me in and train on a particular topic.
Okay. And well, if you are listening us, please go to the website yoursalesmaven.com, and you can get a free copy of Nikki's ebook. It is about closing more sales. I just downloaded today. I don't have time to talk about the tips, but I saw there a lot of tips, clues to close more sales. That's true, Nikki?
That's true. Yeah. So happy to gift that to anybody who would want. Like you said, you just go to yoursalesmaven.com/ebook. It'll take you right to the page where you can download that ebook. And I would love to gift it to anybody listening who wants some support around that closing conversation. Because I mentioned the most misstep in the sales conversation, and the second most misstep is the close. Most people don't actually get the close language out of their mouth. So if you want some support around that, that's what that's for.
Okay, Nikki. Well, finally, Nikki, we are talking a little about curiosity. And well, people is always asking me a thing that is impossible, but it is the secret formula for success in sales, because they are trying to take a part of the sales process, and it is rejection. So if curiosity had a formula for success in sales, what would it look like in one sentence, or what will be the parts that will be in that formula?
What's included in the formula for creating curiosity is the questions that you ask and the way you answer questions.
Okay. Nikki, that's a great answer. I wanted to thank you to be here in my first episode in Stop to Sell. And I always want that the salespeople that listen us as an action plan to start to put in action the curiosity in sales. So I'm going to say what they should do. If you agree with me, you tell me later, okay?
Okay.
So, number one, about curiosity. Don't think you are the most important thing in the sales process. The customer is the most important human being in the sales process. Second, prepare your questions and please listen your customer, okay? And the third one that I'm thinking is use the cat energy to kept the attention of your customers. What do you think about this action plan, Nikki?
I love it. I love it.
Do you want to add something?
No, you nailed it. You nailed it. The most important
Yes?
thing is, yes, the customer is the most important. You want to show up and you want to ask good questions and you want to think about, can you pique their interest? Can you get that little here kitty kitty going and draw people in to want to have a conversation with you?
Okay, Nikki. Well, to sell, we need to have the permission, but to close this first episode, do I have your permission?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks for having me.